Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show. This is your Royal Ascot Day 3, Day 4 and Day 5 preview. I'm your host George Elek and I'm delighted to be joined by oddschecker's very own racing tipster Andy Holding. Now the reason for this, normally we do individual days and previews, but we're recording this the week before to get these previews to you as early as possible, and as such we don't have final fields, we don't have final decks in yet, so we're just going to go through all the races that are priced up, 3 or 4 on each day, as one bumper preview. And if there are any of the handicaps that Andy's got fancies in, they'll of course be part of his column on the week itself. We've already recorded Day 1 and Day 2 previews in full, so you can find those on the oddschecker YouTube channel now. But without, we've been here for a while, Andy, we don't need any more small talk, we can get straight into the racing. And first up on the Thursday, we've got the Norfolk, which is the 2:30, the first race on the card. And here, Elite Status, all the rage, 6-4 favourite. American Rascal, I hope you can tell us about. You say you've gone through the Wesley Ward horses already, is 11-4. River Tiber, who we probably don't anticipate will take up this opportunity, is 7-1. Devious, 12-1. Noche Magica is 12-1. Maximum Impact, who we discussed on the Day 2 preview, is 14-1. 20-1 bar those. Again, a race that, it may be a fairly small field, but at the moment it already looks like a match between the top two.
Yeah, like a lot of the other TR races, we're dealing with sort of 20 runner fields or even more. I think the Windsor Castle have a maximum field. I don't think we'll get that here. We don't often get anything above 10 in the Norfolk. It's the classiest of the 5 furlong TR contests, certainly for the Colts anyway. You just have to be blown away by Elite Status's performance, not only on the eye at Sandown when he won the National Stakes, but on the clock as well. I just think we're dealing with a totally different kind of horse that we have done in previous years gone by with regards to the juveniles. I think a lot of perhaps to do with it is the pre-training and the way that they're brought on. Obviously with the breeze-ups, there's obviously a huge clamour to get the best breeze-up horse, and the way that they're trained specifically to be more precocious, and that's backed up on the clock. I was looking back at some of the previous records for the Coventry and what time figures we got, what numbers we awarded them, the likes of Arizona, for instance, we'd have a speed figure of 86 going into Royal Ascot. Raja Singh, he'd have an 85. Nanda Parada was a 78. Berkshire Shadow was a 79. These are the kind of figures we used to get. Now we're getting horses that, scarily, are doing over 90, but 95 and almost going towards 100, which is Group 1 older horse stakes. What on earth is going on? It's almost unfathomable how these juveniles are capable of running such big numbers. Unfortunately, my way of thinking is that there's only one way down, one way for them, and that's come backwards. Yeah. Because they're almost hitting it out the park that early that they can't possibly keep running to those numbers. There's no way for them to go. So I'm not saying for 1 minute we're seeing the best of Elite Status, but he sets an unbelievable bar. I think
what number has he run on his 2 runs?
96, 97, I think Sam got him doing, which is absolutely ridiculous. Normally that would be, he'd be the daddy, coming into Royal Ascot. We have got a horse that has run quicker than Elite Status. We'll get onto that in another preview. But as regards 5 furlong form, he sets a huge standard. And I think the American horses normally where they would be above average and beat our 2-year-olds, because an above average American horse probably would be more switched on and stronger and more streetwise. I don't think that's the case nowadays. So I think as much admiration I have for Wesley Ward with American Rascal, who did look good on the eye at Keeneland, he's going to have to be very good to beat Elite Status, who's just got explosive power. And he beat a really good field that day at the Esher track. Hackman had done a good time at Chester. He was third, well beaten. He was 5, 6, 7 lengths behind Carl Burke's horse. And reading Carl Burke's sort of reports and his blogs afterwards, and in the build-up to Royal Ascot, it's as if that Elite Status 2 performance were just a stepping stone to Royal Ascot. Yeah. He's going to get better. He's left something to work with. So if that's the case, I mean, God only knows what he's going to do at Ascot. I was very confident of Dramatised winning last year in the Queen Mary based on the numbers and her profile and just what she did on the eye. But I think this is Carber's best 2-year-old, and even though he's got 4 or 5 stellar juveniles this season. So I actually think 6-4 in the scheme of things is still not a bad price.
6-4, elite status, not a bad price. There you go. An absolute superstar coming to Royal Ascot in the Norfolk there. The one for Andy at the top end of the market. The second race we can preview on Thursday at Royal Ascot is the Ribblesdale. Infinite Cosmos is the 4-1 favourite ahead of Oaks winner Soul Sister at 5-1. Blue Stocking 11-2. Save the Last Dance 7-1. Running Lion 12-1. Warm Heart 12-1. Be Happy is a sea of blue on oddschecker 14-1. Azazat is 14s, as is a Village Voice 16-1. Bar those. Really intriguing one, this one, Andy. How do you see the market as it is now?
Yeah, the guys in the office got me to just do a little bit of a small anti-post conversation piece of the day, and perhaps put up a couple of selections and just pick a few races whereby I thought there might be a bit of an angle to be had based on some of the leading contenders perhaps not running, and I thought I just chose this one because I thought, well, Soul Sister's highly unlikely to come here, having won the Oaks only what will be 20 days prior. Save the Last Dance ran like she had square wheels in the Epsom Classic, whereas on soft ground she looked really good at Chester. So I don't think she'll be turning up under any circumstances. Running Line, I think, runs this weekend in the Prix de Diane, the French Oaks. So we've got 3 big players who are all quoted 10-1 or below, likely to go elsewhere. So I was looking at that form at Newbury, a listed race won by Warm Heart. Now, I think the vibes are that maybe now she might not necessarily go, and there's been money for 1 or 2 other Aidan O'Brien horses. So, pending Warm Heart not running, I was very keen on Blue Stocking. She was second that day, but I just loved the way she went through that race at Newbury. She looked very, very prepossessing to the eye as well. Big, strong, scopy filly with loads more to come from her. And she was going on very strongly at the finish. I think that run would have been very beneficial to her. And Rafe Beckett's had a really good season with his sort of 3-year-olds and 4-year-olds so far. So I think it'll take a good horse to knock her or lower her colours, and I think 11-2 for her to be in the frame is a decent each way bet as we stand.
So 11-2, that's with William Hill getting
very good price.
5th of 3. And as you say, if Soul Sister comes out, say the Last Dance comes out, Running Lion comes out, and Warm Heart comes out,
I think she'd be a 4-1 shot on the day. I think Infinite Cosmos, having finished 3rd to Soul Sister at York, everyone will look at that Musidora form and put 2 and 2 together and think, well, that's the form. But I actually don't think I think the Musidora obviously produced the winner, but beyond that, I didn't think the rest of the field were that great that day, and I think the Epsom Oaks was just such a poor time figure, and the come home time was so slow, and I'm still not absolutely convinced around that Soul Sister form line. I just don't think a lot of horses turned up at Epsom. The fact that great suspect that the horse of Jack Chandler's finished third in close-up third in the Epsom Oaks cast shadows of doubt over that form line. So yeah, I'm looking for a different kind of pool of horses to concentrate on here, and Blue Stocking is the leader in that pack.
Blue Stocking, the selection for Andy there, bit of each way thievery at 11-2 before the race cuts up. The final race we can preview here on the Thursday is the Ascot Gold Cup, where we've got joint favourites Eldar, Eldarov and Coltrane, both 3-1 favourites. Emily Dickinson 7-1. Courage Mon Ami is 10-1. Yabir 10-1. Subjectivist 10-1. Broom 12-1. Echoes and Rain 14s, 20-1 bar those, Andy.
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating race, the Gold Cup. It's a race I struggle to have a bet in most of the time because I think it's quite a good watch rather than getting involved in. And I think this year is no different. Very, very trappy to get your head around. There's a definite changing of the guard now, isn't he? Trushad's obviously on the way out. Unfortunately, he's missed the last 2 Gold Cups because the rain hasn't come for him. He's been really, really unlucky. And we've always had, a Cripsios, a leading light that's just been very difficult to beat. Stradivarius is no longer with us as well. So a totally different pool of horses, and a lot of horses that have yet to run over this sort of trip. A lot of good mile 6, 2 mile horses such as Yabir, Elderoff, Emily Dickinson, Courage Mon Ami. Obviously that's been put up in dispatches by some good judges. Almost a little bit of a flyer taking on him. But every time I can't keep coming and looking and coming back round to this race and thinking, well, what's the obvious pick? It hits me every time. That's Coltrane. He's just almost bomb-proof to me. There's a little bit of almost like snobbery attached to him as well. I don't think because he's a particularly sexy horse, and he's got that kind of like a grinder's mentality rather than he doesn't wow you with his brilliance, but he just keeps getting the job done and he keeps improving. I mean, he won the handicap here last year, beating a good field, even though it was only a handicap. You still have to be a good horse to win those races against several other well-handicapped horses, particularly from the Willie Mullins setup. I don't think he got enough credit for that day. And since then, he's just gone through the roof. Ended up running a tremendous race in Ascot last season. And then, of course, he won the Cigar Road first time off the bat. Not a stellar field, he did only beat Wise Owl, but he was super strong at the finish. But once again, he proved his suitability to the track, and we know he stays 2.5 miles, whereas you can't say that against quite a few others. So I think 3 to 1's fairly solid for him. It's hard to see how Coltrane's not going to turn up here and run his normal race, and a Coltrane normal race, I think it's going to make him very difficult to beat. So yeah, he's sort of like the no nonsense, no frills bet for me here.
Coltrane 3 to 1 there for the Ascot Gold Cup, pretty much across the board. You've got Bet365, Sky Bet, Paddy's, Betfair Sportsbook, Star Sports, Bet UK and Betway, all 3 to 1. As I say, vying for favouritism with Eldar Eldarov, but no question for Andy who the value is for the Ascot Gold Cup on Thursday. On to Friday's racing now, and we're going to kick off with the Albany, which is the first race on the card, another 2-year-old race where Andy's speed figures obviously come in very handy. We've got joint favourites at the top of the market. Soprano and Jabara are both 4 to 1. Porta Fortuna 6 to 1, and Matrika 7 to 1, Carter's Way 8 to 1, with Navassa Island 12 to 1 by those. And Andy, you say sometimes in your mind the market and your figures don't align for 2-year-old races. We've had one where it did. How do you feel about this one?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, shout goes out to Sam and Andy who basically crunch all the numbers and that they provide the data for us to sort of like analyse. So without them, I'd be struggling, to be fair. So it obviously gives me a good guide when I'm looking at those races where the best horses are likely to come from, how to source them. Obviously, you have to do all the analysis and there's all the factors in it as well. But so far we have a couple of horses that stand out here. One of them is Carla's Way. I thought visually she was quite impressive at Doncaster because she did a lot wrong and yet she still won in the manner of a horse that suggested she could have a bright future. First and foremost, she was very well backed on Townmoor. She was very strong in the market, so a big run was anticipated. She did it the hard way from the front, stayed on very strongly, clocked a really good time for her first time out winning maiden. And she's been fairly well backed in the build up to the race, so I think she's definitely on the short list. The best Irish form up until last weekend, I'll get onto another filly in a minute, is the race won by Porta Fortuna at Naas. She beat a horse first time off the bat called Navassa Island. Now, Navassa Island was the big eye catcher that day. She came from a long way back. She was actually, I think, making her debut in that race, the Michael O'Callaghan stable, which tells you all you need to know there. And Porta Fortuna, who'd had the benefit of the run, just did enough. But they were well clear of the rest, and the time was very favourable. So they've obviously got to go on the short list. And the other one, if it does run, could almost be, dare I say, one of the value bets of Royal Ascot if she turns up here, and that's Pearls and Rubies, who won at Navan, I think it was last Sunday. Again, the guy's got her doing a very good time. A time figure in keeping with Porta Fortuna and Navassa Island. Considering that was her debut run, and it was over 5 furlongs, suggests to me I think she's going to improve as she goes up in trip. Now, looking at Aidan O'Brien's chat this morning, he's done a piece in the Racing Post. You can go and look at it for yourself and make your own conclusions. He's obviously thinking of either the Albany or the Chesham. Now he's got Diego Velasquez in potentially in the Chesham, who was favourite on debut and didn't run the other day because of the ground at the Curragh. He usually runs his best colt in that race. It's unlike him to have a runner in the Chesham from a female perspective. But because she's had a run, then he might be tempted to go down that route. But this looks the obvious race. He hasn't got another run, as far as I know, in the Albany at the moment. And Aidan O'Brien always has a strong representation in the Albany. So I'd be surprised if Pearls and Rubies doesn't come here and take on her own sex. 14 to 1 with William Hill. I think this will also be half those odds, or even less. She could actually be vying for favouritism because I think she's going to improve stones as she goes up in trip. I really like her as well. She's a lovely looker. So she'd be one of my strongest views in the TR races if she was to turn up. Even though I mentioned quite a few, I don't mind Soprano, but the time figure that she clocked at Newmarket's nowhere near good enough. And the one that I'd really put a fork in is Jabara, who wowed everyone at Newmarket the other day. But again, the time figure was pretty poor. And I just don't like backing horses that don't do any kind of figures coming to Royal Ascot. They often get found out. It usually goes to something that's already produced a number that can prove that can run in a strongly run race. It's all right quickening in a slowly run race. You know, it's kind of like, well, so what? But it's a different ball game when they go flat out end to end. So I'd be against the front two in the market. I think the Irish have got a strong representation with Porto Fortuna, Navassa Island, and particular Pearls and Rubies. And the standout 2-year-old for us over this side of the Irish Sea is Carla's Way.
So Carla's Way 8 to 1 best price. That's with Coral. And Bet UK, Porto Fortuna is 6 to 1 across the board. Navassa Island 8 to 1 with Hills. Sky Bet and Pearls and Rubies 14 to 1 with Hills. Plenty to get teeth into. If you were right now, if you had,
you're going to ask me to whittle it down to 2, yeah?
Yeah.
I'll take one from each side. I'll go
Okay.
Carla's Way, pick of the UK horses, as far as we're concerned, and Pearls and Rubies. Yeah. Be very, very big on her if she was to run.
Should clarify, of course, if you do back Pearls and Rubies now and
Yeah.
doesn't turn up, then that will be a loser because we are before final decks. So anti-post rules do apply.
I've actually just took a chance.
Yeah,
It's one of them ones where I'm prepared to lose my money. I think, well, at 14 to 1.
Because as soon as it's confirmed run.
Oh yeah, it's a risk reward. It's like a risk reward golf hole, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you try and drive it in one, and go for the eagle.
I think they always say don't do that, don't they? You know.
Well, yeah. But
get the iron out, lay up, and
Tommy Fleetwood, yeah. Still couldn't find the fairway. So yeah, I've decided to roll the dice and have a crack at that price.
Next up, it's the Commonwealth Cup, where Little Big Bear is the 15 to 8 favourite, looking to follow up that Royal Ascot success from last year. Sakir is 4 to 1, second favourite. Shaquille 10 to 1, Lazoo 10 to 1, Noble Style 12 to 1, Ocean Quest 14 to 1, 20 to 1, bar those, Andy.
Yeah, a lot of conjecture about Little Big Bear the other day with regards to the draw. There was a huge track bias. Let's say if he would have been drawn in 1, 2, 3, would he have won? Possibly not. As it is, the facts are that he beat should have had a ring by length and a half, who's rated 102, albeit an improving 102. You know, his overall form is you can pick holes in it. I think he's going to be one of those Marmite horses you're either a massive fan and prepared to overlook that bias at Haydock and just say, well, he's the best horse in the race. He won at Royal Ascot last year. He's the most preeminent 6 furlong horse we've got. I mean, his Guineas run was always going to happen. Soft ground, over a mile, trying to settle him. It was a bit of a mess, with regards Noble Style and Sakir. They were basically trying to put square pegs in round holes, a lot of those trainers. Why it happens every year. And I'm not, I'm just nitpicking in general. I mean, I never understand some big connections why they constantly do that every year. If you've got 6 furlong horse, why would you run it in the Guineas? It's odd. But anyway, look, he's a big player in this race. Would I back him at the price? Probably not. Is the answer. I got a lot of time with Sakir. He was just a busted flush at a very early stage in the Guineas, but he looked a sprinter through and through last year. The times he was doing, particularly on fast ground, he was looking electric. Some reports say his work hasn't been that great of late at home. I don't know if you read too much into that, but if he turns up the horse that he did last year, then he's a big player. Interesting runner from Ireland as well. Again, I don't know whether this runs or not. Ocean Quest, Jessica Harrington's horse. got drawn on the wrong side the other day at Naas in a very decent race won by the Antarctic. Barring the draw, I think he would have won comfortably, but he hit the line very strong, gave a stiff 6. I think he would be one that you'd have to consider at a price on the day if he was to run and got a good draw. But it's so far in advance, and we don't know how the track's riding. We don't know what the ground's going to be like, whether you want a high, low draw. So it's a difficult race to have a real dogmatic view on at this stage. But Ocean Quest would be a horse I'd be considering close to the time.
To go into the notebook and see how the draw looks.
Yeah.
14-1 Ocean Quest is pretty much across the board there in the Commonwealth. Onto the Coronation Stakes now, where we have a rematch between the front two in the Guineas. Morge came out on top that day, winning the Guineas at 9-1, but is 11-4 second favourite behind Tahira, who's the 10-11 favourite, to reverse that form. Queen for You 8-1, Meditate is 8-1, Sounds of Heaven 12-1, Electric Eyes 14-1, 20-1 bar those. What do you make of this? Because it was a ding-dong battle between the two. Morge came out on top, but the market suggests that we can expect the form to be reversed.
Yeah, the perceived wisdom that day was Morge got first run, and obviously Tahira was pound for pound probably the best filly in the race. It would have been nice to see the rematch maybe in the Irish 1000, but Tahira vindicated the view that she is a top class filly by winning in pretty comfortable fashion. Wasn't a wow performance, but she did what she had to do, and it's quite clear to me anyway. I think the front two in the Guineas, they would probably be slightly ahead of the Colts at this stage. The likes of Chaldine, etc. Just based on the numbers they did at Newmarket compared to the Colts version the day before. The fact that they pull well clear of the rest, they look too, above average 3-year-olds, didn't they, at that trip? I think the market's probably got it about right. Tahira was expected to need the run as well. Newmarket, I think Dermot Well said that she was 2-3 weeks behind, and she proved that when she won at the Curragh. So I can't really go against the market here. I wish I could come up with something a little bit more, with regards to value. Maybe Tarara, although I don't think Dermot Weld had run 2 in the race. I thought Tarara caught the eye behind Tahira in the Irish 1000. She didn't get any run at all, and she was going just as well as Tahira when she got a clear run. But I think Dermot, knowing the way he trains, he'd probably save her for something on home soil. I think she's entered up to running a fillies race prior to Royal Ascot. So that would be a bit of a shame, because 25-1 would look a big price for her. But yeah, it's hard to get away from Tahira. Particularly the vibes have not been that great from Morge in the last week or two. Yeah.
So we've got Tarawa is 25-1 with 365 in Unibet, but as Andy says, proceed with caution, because maybe an unlikely runner here. As I say, Morge 11-4 and Tahira 10-11. On then to the final race we can preview on the Friday. It is the King Edward, and this has been a big talking race over the last couple of days, because King of Steel, who went so mightily close in the Derby, was suddenly punted in from 6-1 to 6-4 in a matter of minutes. Still 6-4 best price, a short 5-4 in places, but then I don't know, people would have seen the Sky Sports Racing clip of Matt Chapman talking about texting those related to Ammo Racing and Roger Varian, and everyone kind of claiming that they have no idea where the money's come from. I've looked on the exchange, and there's been some matched at kind of 2.7, 2.8, but pennies really. So it does feel like a bit of a weird one, who you want to believe there. But King of Steel is the 6-4 favourite. Does he run? We don't know. Circle of Fire is 5-1, Castleway 6-1, Alda 10-1, Continuous 10-1, Military Order 10-1, Canberra Legend 10-1, Auguste Rodin 12-1, Artistic Star 14-1, Klondike 16-1, a few others 16-1 and bigger too. I mean, it's a hard race to preview, doesn't it, at the moment, because you feel like the favourite is an unconfirmed runner and makes up the whole outlook of the race.
Absolutely, yeah. He's one that I'd probably just through instinct want to take on anyway. He had a very, very hard race in the Derby. It was a good time figure, and he's gone toe to toe with the best mile and a half horse around by quite a while, by quite some way. Proving that he is the horse that Aidan O'Brien thought he was prior to the Guineas. Look, it was a good Derby, and he is the form horse, but you have to put it into context. It was, it's only a few weeks ago. Will he bounce off that, rebound off that? Will he go on fast ground again? Because he is quite a heavy top tool, so a lot depends on the weather. There's lots of ifs and buts, and at the prices at the moment, he just makes limited appeal. If he turns up in the day and everything looks rosy in his guard, and you can still get sort of 7-4, then fair enough. But you know, I can't be tipping him here at 6-4 at this stage. I think Aidan O'Brien's going to have quite a bit of a say in this race. He's got one at Tower of London who bombed out on soft ground 2 runs ago, but he bounced back to something like his best the other day on a quicker surface. And reading Aidan O'Brien's stable tour, as it were, of Royal Ascot runners, he's already earmarked this race for this horse, Tower of London. So at least you know with him, he's going to go, and he's 16-1. So I think whatever Aidan O'Brien's going to run in this race, he'll have some idea of where he stands. Obviously, winning the Derby with Auguste Rodin, he's going to pick his sort of next best ones that missed the Derby and come here relatively fresh. So he would be an interesting contender on many fronts. And I think you've got to look at Castleway as well, who I thought was really good at Newmarket when he won the other day for Charlie Appleby. Again, I don't know whether he comes here or not, but he's got a lovely way of going, nice stride on him. His time was good at Newmarket as well, for those of you that pay attention to the numbers. So there's a couple here that could easily upset the apple cart, whether King of Steel runs or not. So Tower of London at 16-1 as we speak. I think that'll go. I think he'll start single figures, and you know, sort of Castleway's fairly solid as well.
Castleway 6-1, Tower of London 16-1. I'm going to throw one at you.
Go on,
because I backed it. Artistic Star, who kind of was a bit of an eye catcher later on in the Derby. He was well backed that morning as well, and then of course the form was franked with Torito winning well after. Yeah,
I think Torito will be a big player at Royal Ascot, one of the handicaps. Don't know whether he'll go King George handicap or whether he'll go mile and a quarter handicap. I don't know that, but Artistic Star beat him very easily at Sandown, and he ran quite well, as you say, in the Derby. I suppose you've got to view it that if we're putting a fork in King of Steel for one reason or another, you've got to, you can't change your opinion and think, well, okay, why would we be flagging at one that is down the field? But it's all about the price, I suppose, in that respect. You know, one's 6-4 and the other one, what price is it?
14-1.
14-1. Yeah, there's a chance that you could easily turn around or get closer to King of Steel on a different day and a different track. But yeah, he's an interesting runner.
Great that he didn't say it was a terrible bet.
No, not at all.
On to Saturday. We've got 3 races to cover on Saturday that we've got prices for. The first of which is the Hardwick, where Hucum, a horse that you've had some success with in the past, Andy, is the 9-4 favourite with Bet365, as short as 13-8 elsewhere. So a proper case there of why you should be shopping around using oddschecker. Free Wind is 3-1, Par Driver 15-2. Dover Legend 8-1, Changing of the Guard and Westover and Adayar all 12-1. Rebels Romance and Emily Upjohn, Broome all 14-1, 16-1 bar those. Again, another race that's going to cut up a fair bit in the coming days, but you would think, well, at least those top 2 or 3 in the market should be confirmed runners.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking it's going to be 8-9 days in advance of this race, so a lot of water to flow under the bridge. I think the ground is going to be really key to Hucum. I think if you could guarantee that there was enough rain around next week, and there is, you know, quite a few forecasts out there that suggest that it's not going to be, like we've had in the last few days. There's going to be some showers around, and that will really play into Hucum's strengths, because he doesn't want it really rattling quick. I don't think Good to Firm will be any help to him at all. But you just can't get away from the fact how well he beat Desert Crown the other day. There was a period in that race when he looked in trouble. He got boxed in. He thought, there's no way he's going to fetch Desert Crown out. He was a Derby winner and stays the trip really well. And he went by him, I thought, quite readily at Sandown. And he was hitting the line very strong, going further away from a really good Derby winner. And that just tells you where we are now with Hucum. I think he's really come of age. I don't think Owen Burrows gets half the credit he deserves, because he had a bit of a bad press a few years ago when he was given a pressure job of handling a lot of those Hamdan Al Maktoum horses. but he's done incredibly. His strike rate is exemplary. I think he's up sort of like in the William Haggas sort of bracket. But his handling of not only Hookham but Amnart has got to be commended. I think Amnart's a top class horse, and Hookham is just so reliable. He's got great form at Ascot as well. That's the final cherry on the top. So I think 9-4. I'd be more keen on flagging that up than I would sort of Kings of Steels this one. Yeah. I think the firms that have got 13-8, that they're more in line with how I see it.
9-4 is with Bet365 standout price, probably not one that's going to last too long if Andy is right. So make sure you get on that if you can. In the Hardwick. Next up is the Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes, the Platinum Jubilee Stakes last year, renamed back to the Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes to pay tribute to the deceased Majesty the Queen. And we've got Artorias is the 4-1 favourite ahead of Highfield Princess at 8-1, Kinross 10-1, Art Power 11-1, Rohan 12-1, Sacred 14-1, Alsa Hale also 14-1, Wellington 14-1. Stats very stand out with live score bet 6-1, maybe the market price, the reliable price, 20-1 bar those, Andy.
I think of all the races we're going to discuss, I have discussed, this is the most tricky to get your head around, just because there's so many horses from different parts of the world running in it. The King's Stand, the sprint on the first day, hasn't got an absolute obvious like nature strip or a black caviar that setting the world alight over in Australia and doing ridiculous things and then carrying all before it at Ascot. You've got Artoris, you've got Wellington, you've got horses that have been around the globe, like your Kinrosses, that Alsa Hales have been out in Maidan, horse called Cannonball as well. Horses that don't run regularly enough, and we don't get enough evidence of them against the UK horses to know where we're at. So I think this is a real tricky one. You'd have to respect Artoris, who was obviously very eye-catching in this race last year. I don't know anything about Wellington's form lines. I'll have to apologise for that and for my ignorance for not looking at the Hong Kong form or Sha-Tin form as it is. I think Sacred will be a player, even though I think 7 furlongs is her trip. I don't know whether she'll go down a different route. The interesting one for me, if it did run, would be Alsa Hale. I mentioned him. He was third in the Alquoz sprint over in Maidan, but his form and his body of work over in Maidan was absolutely exemplary. He won a group race first time off the bat, or first time off the plane, as they call it over there, in a spectacular style. I mean, the sectionals, which I got off turf tracks that day, were by far and away the best of any race, even on the straight track over 5 and 6 furlongs. So he obviously put in a good shift that day. He backed it up next time out over the same course and distance, winning just as easily. And the only race left for because there's no 7 furlong race on World Cup night, was the 6 furlong event. I don't think they really necessarily desperate to go for it, but he was in good form. They thought, well, let's roll the dice. And unfortunately, the draw counted against him. He was drawn in stall 2. The majority of the race was played out towards the near side, and he couldn't quite come to terms with Dana, the eventual winner. But I thought he ran really well over a trip which, on a flat track like that, didn't really play into his strengths. But this stiffer track, I definitely haven't been played, because I think predominantly you want horses that get 7.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the 6 furlong winners in the Wokingham and this race in particular have got 7 furlong form at some stage in their careers. So he's similar to Kinross. He's come back from 7 and 1 over 6. So I think Alsa Hale is going to be a big player in this. And he really would like fast ground as well.
Alsa Hale 14-1 with Paddy's 888 Betfair and a couple of others as well. Alsa Hale, the one for Andy in the Queen Elizabeth II Jubilee Stakes. Finally, the final race we're previewing in this preview is the Wokingham, where Orazio is the 8-1 favourite ahead of Kanjar at 12-1. Jumby 14s, Lear Special is 16-1, Fresh 16-1, Lethal Nymph 16s, Probe 16s, Summerhand 20s, Aschad 20s, King's Lynn as well. Again, loads still in this one, Andy. Hard to really wrap your head around again.
Yeah, I'm going to sort of almost play the old Phil Ruse, as they used to say in It's a Knockout, play my joker here and almost bat this one back to you, because this one is just so far away. Like, you could almost get an angle or your head around the Hunt Cup, because you know it's only 4 or 5 days away. You're likely not to get too bad ground by then. The draw probably might not necessarily be so influential. Whereas week next Saturday, anything could happen. They could have had thunderstorms. They could, you know, the ground could change. And a horse like Orazio, for instance, the favourite, he's not necessarily massively ground reliant, but his two most preeminent performances of late in recent times have been on soft ground early on in the season. I thought he was brilliant when he won here last time out. Clocked a big number, his career best. So he's obviously arriving here in great nick. But if it's good to firm grounds week on Saturday and he gets the wrong draw, then I'm going to be a fool saying, you know, he's won him in naps of the meeting.
Yeah.
But it's obvious on come next Saturday if it was to rain and it was, you know, on the easy side, then I'm going to be putting him up. So your guess is as good as mine. Another one I've got a huge amount of time for this season, having watched him, is Probe. I don't think it was the wisest thing in the world to perhaps run him at Epsom the other day. I didn't think that track would suit him. You know, he went off favourite, and that sort of theory reared its ugly head behind Badri. He was just like a cat in a hot tin roof coming down that hill. But he was really good at Newmarket the time before when he beat chairman of the board, and I think that handicap that he won is probably one of the sort of like the key form lines to this race. It had all the kind of Wokingham type horses in it. So if he runs to that level again, and I thought he did really well to win from the draw that day as well. It was still 22 or 22 or something like that. It was ridiculous for the fact that he pulled that off. And he was second to Orazio the time before at the same track. So he's got a similar chance to Orazio, plus that he doesn't necessarily need rain, whereas Orazio does. So those would be my two way in advance.
Great stuff. There you have it. That's our Thursday, Friday and Saturday Royal Ascot preview from Andy Holding. Make sure you subscribe to the oddschecker YouTube channel, and there you can find our day 1 and day 2 previews that we've already recorded. Thank you very much to Andy as ever for his tips and insight ahead of Royal Ascot week. Make sure you also download the oddschecker app, where you can find the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms crucially, and Andy's tips straight to the app every single morning of racing. Thank you very much for watching or listening to these podcasts. We'll be back again next week or the week after with some more racing previews. But in the meantime, enjoy Royal Ascot, and please do ensure that you're gambling responsibly.